All right, we are live on October 3rd. This is the Amateur Analyst Sports Podcast, the weekly AA meeting. Go run it down real quick, let everyone introduce themselves. Kyle?
Can't wait to talk a little bit about the playoffs for Major League Baseball. October is finally here. Also can't wait to talk about how disappointing the Seminoles were last weekend.
Graham?
Hey guys, I don't know about you, but I'm really excited for the 2016 college football season. Can't wait for it to start. Think the Noles are going to look really good this year.
Doobie?
I'm subdued and I'm not myself, and that's really tough for me to handle because this is such a big week for Brett Bielema. He's playing Alabama, and because of the Florida State Seminoles, I can't even express myself like I would like to. I can't even get words out right now. So, Brett, I'm sorry.
All right, and I am Eric Palmer-Jones. I am somewhat of the host of this thing. Sometimes I give some analysis as well. We are the amateur analysts. We are not great at what we do. That's why we're amateurs, but we hope you enjoy it anyway. We're going to start this week with some MLB playoff predictions. The regular season has come to an end, unless you count these little wild card play-ins as regular season. Depends. So we're going to get off with some playoff predictions for each league into the World Series prediction, followed by some predictions and thoughts on the Cy Young's, MVPs, and Rookies of the Year. Kyle, start us off.
Yeah, I kept it pretty simple with my playoff predictions. I'm really excited about that Giants-Mets matchup in wild card game. I think that's going to be a lot of fun, but I have Syndergaard pitching the Mets through to the Giants. I know it's an even year, but I think the Giants will take it. They'll go on and lose to Chicago, though. So I've got the Cubs out of the NL, the Red Sox in the American League. I think that's going to be a really, really fun World Series. It's very interesting to me how Boston is either first or last, and it seems like whenever they're first, they automatically start to compete for a World Series championship. They don't just get to the playoffs and kind of bow out. I think just the way they set up and the way they can score runs, I've got the Red Sox winning the World Series in 6 against Chicago. Not really a pick that most people are seeing, but a lot of people have Chicago taking it home. But I think that while they've obviously been really successful, I like the Red Sox in the 7-game matchup.
All right, Graham, who do you got?
So, like Kyle said, I'm pretty excited about the wild card game for the NL. I've got the Giants beating the Mets, though. I think while Thor himself is a fantastic pitcher, and in the next 3 or 4 years is going to showcase himself as one of the few aces in baseball, I think Bumgarner is going to show his postseason magic and take the Giants into for the postseason contention. But I think whoever it is that ends up taking the wild card game is going to lose to the Cubs in 5 games. I've actually got the Nationals beating the Dodgers, and the Cubs and the Nationals playing in the NLCS. Over in the AL, personally, I was really upset that Toronto won yesterday. Had my tickets bought to watch the Orioles here in Baltimore, but unfortunately, they've got to go to Toronto to win, and I think the Orioles do pull it out, but I don't think they make it further than that first round. All in all, I've got the Cubs beating the Rangers in 6. I think the Red Sox and the Red Sox are going to beat the Indians, and the Rangers are going to beat the Red Sox. I think that Rangers-Red Sox series is going to be probably the best series of the entire postseason. I see it going 7 games, and I see the Rangers squeaking it out just because the way that they've won throughout the year with pieces here and there. I mean, you got Ian Desmond in center field. I just see the Rangers being able to pull it out, but I think the Cubs finally in the streak.
All right, and Doobie.
All right, I do want to say that I'm going to first give myself credit and then go on to give other people credit in the next topic. But I did predict all of the matchups correctly for the wild card, and I believe I was the only one, including where they would be played. So as far as predictions go, this is my worst week in every other category, but I'll take those wild card predictions. I've got the Giants beating the Mets. It's an even year. I then have the Giants beating the Cubs. It's an even year. In the other side of it, I'll take the Dodgers to take the Nationals, simply because I think that the motivation of playing the Giants in that next round pushes them over the edge. I do want to say something that we haven't talked about enough, and this might parlay into the next conversation, is how wrong I personally was, and I don't know how many other people were, about Daniel Murphy. I thought that was the worst contract signing of all time, other than Pablo Sandoval, and he has proven everybody wrong, and he's possibly one of the reasons why the Nats are where they are. But I don't think that they can beat the Dodgers. Dodgers-Giants, that's going to be an all-time NLCS, but I will take the Giants. It's an even year. And then when we go to the AL, like I said in the last podcast, I'll take Toronto by about 10 runs in this game. They will go on to beat the Rangers as well in an epic matchup that we repeat from last year. I've got the Sox over the Indians in a sweep. I then have the Sox beating the Blue Jays in a great series, which leaves us with the Giants and the Sox, and I will take the Giants. It's an even year.
Go with the even year magic for the Giants. My 2 cents is that the Cubs would win it if the Giants weren't an even year, so I'm all in with Doobie on that one. We're going to move into some award talk now. Cy Young's MVPs, Rookie of the Year. Y'all, you don't have to talk about all of them if you don't want to. If you got one you're real passionate about, take some time on it. Kyle, what do you have?
Yeah, I'll go quickly through them. I've got Kluber in the AL. A lot of people have Porcello because he won 22 games on a Red Sox team that has been pretty impressive. But Corey Kluber has really bounced back, from a tough year last season. So I've got Kluber in the AL. I'm taking Scherzer. There's a lot of guys over there that think they're fit. I did mention, Britain on the side of the American League, 47 for 47 in save opportunities. That's just unreal. I realize that's not necessarily a closer award, but that's pretty impressive. I think he deserves at least some consideration over there. But I've got Scherzer on the National League. He's pitched really well all year. MVPs, I'll keep it quick. I got Mike Trout in the AL, although he's on an awful team in the Angels, and I feel like he consistently gets screwed. And then I've got Chris Bryant in the National League. Rookie of the Years, there's been a lot of talk going back and forth on Sanchez and Fulmer. In my opinion, Fulmer's the one who's been around for longer. I think he really merits as an all-around Rookie of the Year, although Sanchez has had a really, really good 50 or so games. And then for the National League, I've got Corey Seager from the Dodgers.
All right, Graham, do you agree?
I agree in a couple areas, though. I'll say Zach Britton should win the AL. The Cy Young Award is supposed to be for the best pitcher in baseball. It doesn't say that it has to be a starting pitcher. And the fact that Zach Britton had 47 safe chances and got every single one of them with a .54 ERA is insane. He is literally the only reason the Orioles are even being considered in the playoff, and the only reason they made it. I don't know if you guys remember at the beginning of the year, pretty much everybody picked the Orioles to come in dead last in that division. I think what he's able to do shows just how great of a pitcher he is and how not necessarily valuable, because that's not part of the award, but I definitely think he deserves that. From a Rookie of the Year standpoint, I'm going to go a little off the book from the AL side. I'm going to go with Gary Sanchez. 20 home runs in 53 games and a 300 batting average or 299 is absurd. Fulmer looked great. Yeah, Sanchez looked great the entire year. I think for me, had Detroit actually made the postseason, Fulmer would have got that little extra nudge. But to see what Gary Sanchez did as soon as he was called up, I think it's just unbelievable, and I think he absolutely deserves to be Rookie of the Year. And I know Doobie's going to absolutely disagree with me.
All right, well, Doobie, prove him right.
He is. I am going to prove him right, but I do want to eat crow here a little bit. First of all, I laughed at Michael Cirio about whenever we made these predictions last, about a month ago, when he said Britain for Cy Young. I thought that was absolutely out of the question. However, I do think now that he is a deserving candidate, so I do apologize to him.
Don't apologize to Cirio. He's not here tonight.
I apologize to Graham, then, playing the place of Sirio. And while we're on the topic of Graham, we discussed WAR last week, wins above replacement, and I said that Graham had wins above replacement on Sirio. I'm taking that back because Graham's dog is completely ADD and unmanageable. So the fact that that dog is ruining this podcast for not only us but every listener has made it so that you have dropped below Michael Sirio in WAR. Michael Sirio is now the MVP. No, I'm joking. But back to actual conversations. I also want to apologize to Palmer. I completely laughed at him last week when he said that Mike Trout deserves the award. I'm not apologizing because I think that my logic is any more flawed, but I have seen analysts everywhere, including Kyle apparently, say that Mike Trout deserves the award. I don't see how that is even fathomable, how Mookie Betts, he is better in every stat except the made-up categories like WAR. In my opinion, he's on a great team. He is a future great player in the league, and he is just as well-rounded and actually had better defensive stats than Trout this year. So I think it should go to Mookie Betts, and I really hope that it does. Cy Young, I will disagree with you guys. I'm going to go with Porcello. In the AL. In the NL, I'm going to go with Lester. I think Scherzer's been there, done that type of thing recently, and the Cubs are everybody's darling. So I think that he will get that. Then the only ones I really want to talk about, I'm definitely going to go Fulmer for the AL Rookie of the Year. I think the fact that he is almost leading the AL in ERA makes him deserve that. The fact what Sanchez has done is absolutely incredible, and I think that he, if he had played a full season, would deserve the award. But I don't think that you can give it to a guy who didn't play a full season as opposed to a guy who impacted his team over an entire season and almost put them in the playoffs with his play. So that's why I go with Fulmer. I do want to give a shout-out. Ryan Healy came up very late for the A's. He's not going to win the award, but he probably will be in the top 5 of the voting. Watch out for him next year. The other ones, I'll just go along with everybody else. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
And the one thing that I do want to add – yes, sorry. The one thing that I do want to add, just because Sirio's not on the podcast, Sirio did want me to say that his pick for NL Cy Young was Jeff Samardzija. And I don't know if you guys know this or not, but Jeff Samardzija actually played wide receiver in Notre Dame. So automatically he should win the Cy Young Award. And he just wanted me to pass that along for you guys.
Doobie, what's the thoughts on the WAR after that comment?
I was going to say he's pulling close, but unless that dog passes out, he's still going to be behind.
All right. Any more baseball talk y'all want to put in before we move on to everyone's favorite subject, except for this week, where we all hate our lives of college football? Take that as a no. We're going to move on to college football. We will very shortly be talking about our Noles. I apologize to the non-Noles listeners. We're going to keep it short, I promise, but we have a lot to yell about. We're going to start as usual, just a little talk on the picks and reactions, some of our favorite picks we made for this past week, and our general reactions to any of the games or outcomes. And as usual, Kyle, start us off. And Kyle is not making any noise. So, Graham, start us off till Kyle gets his sound fixed.
Sure. So, unfortunately for college football and everybody else that was looking at our picks, I did pretty awful this week, I think. So my picks aren't necessarily games that I picked really well. But the two games that I want to react to are the Vandy-Florida game. I think it was pretty awful for it to be a 13-6 game with Vandy driving to win the game and get picked off at the last minute. I think Florida had 4 defensive tackles or defensive linemen that were all injured throughout the game. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens to that team for the rest of the year. And then the other game that I put down for reaction was the Tennessee-Georgia game. I thought there was no way that Georgia would be able to even keep it close, keep the score close. But they kept it close all the way down to the wire. And I think Tennessee has some type of luck with them that could take them all the way to the playoffs. It's the way they've won these past couple weeks is just pretty incredible.
They're the Auburn.
Kyle, are you back? Yes, you're back.
They're the Auburn of 2016 so far. They really are, the way they win football games. So I went 13-11 against the spread, 19-6 straight up. Obviously, bones about the Noles. We'll talk plenty about that. Really shocked at San Diego State, and I'm sure Doobie will talk about it because that was one of his favorite teams a couple of weeks ago. South Alabama is a good football team, but I don't think they should beat San Diego State by 18 points. So that one was a shock to me. Like Graham said, I really like Georgia playing so well against Tennessee. It's a little bump that they couldn't finish it off. But he's a great quarterback, and I think it's a 24-month season for Georgia. Really think that they're really be awesome next year, and so this is kind of just try out and get Easton going. But yeah, like I said, I had a pretty good week straight up, slowly but surely trying to catch up to Doobie for the overall lead and against the spread. Got some work to do, but I like my straight up pick, so maybe I should just stick to that and not worry about Vegas.
All right, Doobie.
First of all, I do want to concede to Kyle. Very impressive week. I was finally dethroned as the best picker in a single week. I still didn't go below 500. That's a mathematical impossibility, I guess. No, but seriously, Kyle is creeping up on me, so I better get my shit together. I'm disappointed in the fact that I continue to pick Texas, and will do so again this week because I apparently can't learn. I'm also disappointed that my fandom of Florida State made it to where I refused to pick what I actually believed and still picked us to cover that spread, as I'm sure at least 2 or 3 other people who, besides Palmer, picked Florida State to cover that spread. I didn't actually believe that would happen, but I can't bring myself to pick against Florida State in any scenario. We'll get into that later. San Diego State blows my mind. Graham, you're absolutely correct. I actually didn't see that score until today when Palmer put out the results, and I was floored by the fact that when I actually checked, when he said South Alabama won by 18, that was the correct stat and not just a mess up on Palmer's part. So that is insane to me.
I'm sure Doobie saw it and wanted to immediately correct him, be like, no, that's wrong, and then he actually looked.
Yeah, I did. That's entirely correct.
So my reactions this week are pretty straightforward. This was one of the most depressing 5 minutes of my life as a sports fan. Watching Florida State lose in the manner they did, followed up immediately by Georgia losing in the manner that they did. Both teams looked like they were going to lose the game, pulled off a last-minute touchdown to seemingly win the game, and subsequently lost the game. So I didn't move off my couch for quite a while after that. I think I was frozen in shock for a while. So, yeah, that sucked. We're going to go into the Noles a little more. I did pick for the Noles not to cover the spread for this week, and I also picked UGA. I didn't pick UGA straight up for the first time just because I've always been a homer, and I decided for my pick's sake not to do it this week. UGA did, though, get to +3, which only Sirio called. Too bad he's not here to talk about it. I was really sad that Wisconsin didn't quite pull it off. I had them picked straight up again like I did against Michigan State. It was just not very good, and I wish I'd picked their upset like I wanted to. But so that's my general reactions. We're going to go into some Noles talk now. We're going to keep this short, like I said. Bear with us if you're not a Noles fan, but we got to get some stuff off our chest. So Kyle starts off.
Yeah, so I was actually in Doak this weekend, and it was very, very frustrating to watch us have that kind of defense in person. The last 4 weeks we've seen us struggle. It's been a little bit easier to do on TV, but just seeing all the green space that these receivers had, and don't get me wrong, North Carolina's got a pretty good core of receivers. The quarterback's really good. But they're just running out routes and slants and bubble screens and all that kind of stuff. And there's 8 to 10 yards of green space in front of them. I mean, nothing changed from the first quarter to the fourth quarter. Switzer did whatever he wanted. It was really frustrating. And like I said, you don't see that dog in this defense this year, and it's really disappointing because Jimbo saw something in fall camp that really excited him, and it just doesn't seem like that's translating to the season. Everybody else kind of go into what they think, but that obviously really disappointed me.
And Kyle's audio's cut, so we're going to move on to Graham's thoughts. So, Graham, what you got?
Yeah, very disappointing loss. This was actually the game that I felt pretty comfortable going in that we would win. Maybe not by a lot, but at least, to go out of the week and get ready for Miami. The one thing, one of the things that I was really upset about watching this game was there's about a minute and a half, 2 minutes left in the game. You're inside like the 25-yard line, and you've got a fresh set of downs, and you've got arguably one of the best running backs in the country, and you don't run the ball. And you pass it, you score a touchdown, team enough time to go down the field and kick a field goal to win the game. I don't understand how you don't try to run the clock out in that situation with a team that has been able to do what they want on offense and has gone up and down the entire game. As for the defense is concerned, it looked confused. The players on the field looked like they didn't know where they were supposed to be going. There were multiple times where the wide receiver was wide open and the cornerback or the safety or whoever it was just kind of looked over like, oh, I guess that's the guy I'm supposed to be covering. And then they'd run down for 15 yards and finally tackle the guy. Outside of the coaching, I don't know what these players need to do, what these guys need to do. If it's a motivation issue, it's really upsetting. And going into this Miami game, this is a really important game, not only for this year, but from a recruiting standpoint.
All right, Doobie, how are you feeling this is going to be fun?
Well, I think this is going to be more positive than expected. First of all, I want to point out that the schedule that Florida State has faced up to this point has been absolutely ludicrous. Even USF blew out Cincinnati last week. The offenses that has been faced by Florida State up to this point have been arguably, all of them besides Charleston Southern will be in the top 20 by the end of the year.
Just to give you a number on that, Doobie, we've played the 1, 4, 7, and 15 in the S&P offenses so far.
Yeah,
pretty crazy.
Yeah, and I think it will kind of end that way. That being said, there's really no excuse. The talent has been there above any team we faced all year, on offense and on defense. Offenses have executed better than our offense in every game besides USF. And during that USF game, USF was executing better than we were for a large majority of the game. So there's no excuse. That being said, losing to UNC in Louisville does not make this season worthless. Is the season over based on what the goals were? Absolutely. Should Jimbo Fisher be disappointed, and should we all be disappointed? 100%, because we did not live up to what we should have done this year. That being said, there's still a lot to play for. And this game on Saturday is truly the biggest game since the national championship, in my opinion. This will determine everything for this program going forward.
If you ever read Doobie's Facebook status, go read it.
I mean, yes, that is what I'm alluding to. But Jimbo has hitched his wagon to Charles Kelly now. If he was going to fire Charles Kelly and do it in an effective way, it would have been done immediately after the UNC game, like Notre Dame did after they lost to Duke. Now that Jimbo Fisher has kept him on after that loss, it doesn't matter what happens. If that Miami game loses and he fires Kelly after that, it's still no recourse because everyone will blame Jimbo Fisher for not having taken the action when he should have. Now, what should happen in this Miami game is that Florida State should wake up and go out and blow out Miami. Crush them because they're not as talented. They're still in the first year of a completely new scheme, both on the field and off the field. Because Mark Richt runs a completely different program than anybody else. And they
handed out personalized Bibles to every single player.
Which is
what was the Georgia Tech Miami final? Was it 2 scores?
35-21, 14-point game.
Yes.
And did you hear? And Miami had 2 defensive scores, correct?
In about a 2-second span.
Right, exactly. So I mean, that W didn't impress me so much. So I agree with Doobie there. I mean, they're still early. That was their first real game,
First
that
Power
being
5
said,
team.
they deserve they deserve to be given credit that they've won the games, that they're Miami. You're going to get a bump. We should go in and destroy this team, and if we don't, Jimbo Fisher is done at Florida State University. And I don't mean that he'll actually be fired, and I don't mean that he'll actually leave, but he will lose this fan base. He's already lost the media, in my opinion. The way he acted in that press conference today was so arrogant and unacceptable to not only the media but fans. And people are watching, and I think Jimbo thinks he's invincible. And if he loses to Miami, the amount of scrutiny he's going to face from everybody, I think might push him to where if LSU wants him to take that job, he'll take it. So to me, Charles Kelly's a non-factor. Everyone's screaming for Charles Kelly's head. If that didn't happen on Monday, today, it wasn't happening, and it's not going to happen. So we're in a position where Jimbo has staked his entire future against Miami. And if we win this game, we still have a shot to do good things. You win out, Florida State has still had a good year. You upset Clemson. You do some things here. You still win the in-state rivalry. It's not what we wanted, but you still say Jimbo's one of the better coaches in college football. If he loses to Miami, that's all done.
So I'm going to try to keep this quick, but I got some –
Homer, how can you follow that up? How can you follow that up?
I'm going to follow it up. Don't worry. In our last 12 games, this team is 7-5. In our last 10 games versus FBS opponents, this team is 5-5. That is a 500 record against FBS opponents. And if we lose Miami, Jimbo is under 500 against FBS opponents in the last 11 games. That is not what this fan base expects based on what the coaches have told us. The coaches in this offseason went out of their way to hype this team up and talk about how special this group of guys was and how great these players were and how much they wanted it and how motivated they were. Jimbo does not do these kind of things. The only time in his career he has hyped up his team like this was 2013. And at that time, everyone was like, this is weird for Jimbo to do this. We don't really understand this. And then we saw the product, which was one of the most dominant teams in college football history.
Everybody in 2013 thought we were still a year away, too.
But Jimbo didn't. That's the thing is Jimbo Jimbo usually knows what he has. Last year, he didn't hype this team up at all. He let the fan base know, like, you better be patient with these guys. This is going to be a rough year. So for him to have those expectations he had in the offseason, for him to convince the university to give Charles Kelly a huge raise so he would not go take the Auburn job in the offseason, and for him to be this wrong about things, it worries me about the program as a whole because he's not – it makes me think he's lost control of it. If he doesn't know what's going on and he's this wrong about what's going on in the program, that scares me more than probably anything else. And I will say the difference in what Notre Dame did with firing their DC is they can afford a buyout pretty easily. Florida State does not have Notre Dame money. We owe Charles Kelly millions of dollars. Deep. We owe Charles Kelly millions of dollars if we fire him. So I think that's a big factor in it.
I think that's bullshit. I'm sorry to call that out.
Money, man.
That's bullshit. If we needed to come up with that money, we would. If Jimbo Fisher said right now, if he had said on Saturday, I'm good with Kelly going, Kelly would be gone. That is not an excuse. I don't want to hear that it was a buyout clause. It's the fact that Thrasher and Wilcox are in Jimbo's pocket. The only way Jimbo's getting forced out of this university if he doesn't take another job is if the boosters force him out. The boosters have the money, and we have the money to buy out Charles fucking Kelly. I mean, that's not an excuse. We can do that. I know it's a high buyout, but that's not why this isn't happening. It's because Jimbo does not want it to happen.
I'm just saying it's not quite the same situation in Notre Dame. They can do it a lot easier. And we're going to get into in a minute about throwing DCs under the bus, which is what I think happened in Notre Dame. So I don't think that's quite the same situation is all I was saying. Also, the last thing I'll say – go ahead, Graham.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
The last thing I'll say before we move on from the Noles, because we've been losing live viewers like flies because we're talking about the Noles too much, obviously, is that if you watch some of the replays of that game, there was a very big lack of effort on defense. Guys jogging to the ball, guys not going to tackle. If they're like, oh, that guy's going to make that tackle. I don't need to go over there. He's going to make the tackle. That's an issue, and to me it's a coaching issue of motivation. But it's also an issue of like if those players, when Charles Kelly's already been under fire, if they don't want to play to save his job, they're kind of voicing their opinion right then and there. They have a chance at Miami to show whether – because they verbally have supported him and said they love him and he needs to stay. If they truly believe that, we'll see some defensive effort that we haven't seen yet against Miami. So I think that's going to be a big indicator of how these players really feel. We need to move on from the Noles. We need to get moving on. We're going to go right into current top 4 predictions. I didn't give these guys a lot of guidelines. I was hoping it would be not your top 4 currently, but your predictions for the top 4 at the end of the year, because those are obviously so Kyle, what did you come up with?
Yeah, so I've got it pretty easy. I got Alabama at 1, Clemson at 2, Ohio State at 3 because I think they beat Michigan, and Louisville at 4. I don't see any reason why the ACC can't get 2 teams in the playoff. 11-1 on the outside looking in with your 1 loss to an undefeated Clemson. In my opinion, get you in. I think there's going to be a 2-loss Pac-12 champion. I think there's going to be a 2-loss Big 12 champion. And the SEC hasn't proven that they deserve 2 teams. It's a new day in college football with an ACC who's been beaten down on, so to speak. It can get 2 teams in, but we absolutely at this point, I can't. It sucks even more that the 2 top teams in the ACC and the Noles aren't even one of them. I've been saying that to y'all for the last week. It's just embarrassing. But those are my 4. I like Alabama, Clemson in the final again, and we'll see what happens.
All right, Graham, who do you have?
So my updated 4, I've got Alabama, I've got Clemson. I think Clemson runs the table the rest of the year. I've got Michigan, who I've had for the last several weeks. I think that was a pretty impressive win over Wisconsin. Granted, it's only by 7 points, but they showed up when they needed to. They had a defensive turnover when they needed to. I think they might not have the talent, like Doobie likes to say every week, but I think we've seen over the past couple weeks that talent doesn't always win. And then on my 4th team, I've got Washington over a really impressive Stanford win.
All right, Doobie.
I've got Bama at 1, always have. I'm going to stick with it. I will go back to saying that they lose a game, and I think they lose it this week. Brett. But I've got Ohio State at 2. They may lose, they may not. I still think that even if they don't lose, they're behind Bama in the playoff standings. Their strength of schedule is awful. It's the worst of any playoff contender besides Michigan's. And I think they beat Michigan, and I think someone else beats Michigan too. I won't harp on the talent thing again, Graham. I don't mean to offend you. I know you're a Michigan man. Clemson, I've got them at 3. I think they lose a game. I'm not going to go any further into that.
So you're not going to say if you think that game is Florida State?
I'm not going to say.
Of course he's not going to say it.
Who I think they'll lose to. But I think they'll lose a game. I still think they'll win the ACC, and the reason for that is I think it's completely put out of contention when Houston beats Louisville and puts himself into the playoff. I think that is a play-in game. I think it is the best game of the year. I must say that Louisville has proved a lot to me. That being said, I think that Houston beats them at home. I think that home field advantage is going to be insane. That's going to be one of the biggest tickets of the year anywhere. You're going to get a lot of people in there cheering for Houston, and I really like that game to go to them, and I think it's a great story if Houston makes it into the playoff.
So top 3, I think we all had Bama, Clemson, and OSU. I don't know why I said it in that order because I actually have OSU number 1, Bama number 2, Clemson number 3.
So does that mean you have Bama and Clemson losing games?
No, it does not. I have Bama and Clemson, or OSU both undefeated, but I think Bama has a lot more scares, and I think OSU just blows everybody out at this point.
Even with the strength of schedule, you think that's possible for them to jump them?
I think Urban Meyer is going to slowly, and maybe it didn't happen this year, but I'm glad you said that because this is something I did some thinking on today. I think Urban Meyer, in the next 3 years since Saban into retirement, I think he becomes Saban in college football. The way he's coaching, the way his team plays, and the way he's recruiting is just it's Saban level, if not better in certain aspects. So I think OSU just blows everybody out. I don't think Michigan can do much against them. I saw a very decent at best Michigan offense this week against Wisconsin. So I have OSU number 1. I got Bama number 2. I have Clemson number 3. I think they all win out. And right now I got Washington number 4 for the sole reason that I don't see anyone in the Pac-12 that's going to challenge them. I was hesitant on that after looking at it. They went to overtime at Arizona last weekend before that great game against Stanford this week. I'd like to see them play a real road opponent. I don't think, as much as Doobie has hyped them up when we've talked during the week, that Oregon is that team. But we'll see. Maybe they are. I want to see them play a tough road game, though, because that Stanford game was at home, and what I've been hearing is just one of the best environments in college football to watch a game, which I had never heard before, but apparently that place was loud. That place was nuts. And yeah,
they also didn't just beat them. They murdered them.
They beat Stanford playing Stanford's game, too.
Yeah.
Like tough, grinded out physical football. Winning the line of scrimmage, I mean.
I find this amusing that I'm the only one who picked Washington to win the Pac-12, and I seemingly have the least confidence in them of anyone now. I mean, I still think they're the best team in the Pac-12, but I expect Stanford. I've never thought was that good a team. The way that they defended McCaffrey, I never expected that to happen. So they might be better defensively than I even imagined, and that quarterback certainly is better than I imagined. But I think that it's also a large effect of the Pac-12 being a piece of garbage. Not as much as the Big 12, but close.
We'll get there.
Palmer, so what's their road game you're excited to watch them? Utah or Cal or both?
I want to see both. I think Cal's the bigger challenge. But, I want to see both. I also just want to see them play a road game again because that Arizona game, Arizona's not good.
Are they home against Wazoo?
Yeah, they're home against Wazoo. That was one I was hoping would – they're not?
No, they're at Washington State.
Okay, then there it is. I want to see that game. I want to see that offense. I want to see them defend that offense at Wazoo.
I want you guys to just repeat who you just said Washington has to play away at. It's their 4 toughest games left on their schedule are all away. I'm just pointing that out.
Yeah.
Oregon, Washington State, Cal, and Utah.
They still have USC on there too.
And Utah and Oregon are 2 of the hardest places to play, and it's arguable that Oregon is the hardest place to play in the country.
Yeah.
We're gonna see. We're gonna find out.
I'll get into that later.
We're gonna find out. I think that Houston LSU game ends up not mattering because of that.
Houston LSU?
Houston, Louisville. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
That was a.
I know. I honestly didn't know if I'd missed that on their schedule. I was like, that's going to be a big game as well.
I think that game. I'll say this though: if Houston wins that game, it's going to be tough to keep them out, regardless. Even if Washington goes undefeated, it's going to be tough to keep them out. But I think that happens in that situation if they both go undefeated. So we're going to move on from the playoff predictions. We're going to go into. Kind of what we mentioned a little earlier, DC's taking the heat for bad teams. We've seen Brian Van Gorder get fired at Notre Dame. We've seen Vance Bedford today, I believe this morning, got demoted to DB coach at Texas, and the head coach Charlie Strong saying he's now going to take over defensive calls, trying to save his job. And we see this from year to year. We see coordinators fired and taking hits, and head coaches remaining. Everyone's calling for Charles Kelly at Florida State to get fired now. So I just wanted to get y'all's thoughts on, the whole coordinators taking the heat. Should the head coaches step up a little more and take responsibility, or, is in their best interest, they need a job and they're going to let somebody else take that loss?
Yeah, that's kind of what I think. It's a dog-eat-dog world, right? You want to save your own job. You want to save your own gig. Jimbo's kind of got it made. I don't think he's ever going to have to question his job security, but Brian Kelly, absolutely. Charlie Strong, multiply that by about 100 when it comes to, hot seats. Absolutely. If Charlie Strong wants to save his job and take over the defensive calls, at least he knows when they go 7-5 at the end of the year, it's going to be his fault and he's going to get fired because of his fault, So, I don't have a problem with it. I don't love it. I do like that, Jimbo's not calling this guy out in press conferences. I hope he's reaming him behind the scenes, but who really knows?
Graham?
Yeah, I think the one that I was most surprised with, well, not really surprised with, but is the whole Texas situation. They're obviously not going to fire Charlie Strong in the middle of the year, but Texas fans are getting a little antsy. They've got all this money that they're throwing at the program, and they're used to being a top-tier program, and they're tired of looking at Alabama and Ohio State and Florida State, quite frankly, up until the last couple of weeks. Be one of those top teams and rebuild and get to where they are. And, I think this is their way to basically go to Charlie and say, hey, look, you guys have given up over 400 yards the last two weeks. You're a defensive-minded coach. You need to get this back on track, or it's not going to be a program at the end of the year. There's some pretty great coaches that we probably can bring in at the end of the year. Looking at Les Miles, looking at Tom Herman.
Tom Herman's licking his chops.
Right, yeah, exactly. If they don't go to the Big 12, Tom Herman's going to take that job in a heartbeat. That's way more of a fit for him than I think LSU would be. So I think it's interesting to see what's going to play out there. But Charlie Strong is definitely on the hot seat, and this is just a way to give him one last chance to get that ship right.
All right, Doobie.
First of all, I just want to address that if that Texas job opens and that Tom Herman gets offered it, they could offer Houston to go into the Big 12 and give them a one-game handicap every year, and he would still take the Texas job. There's no way that he doesn't take that job if it's offered to him. No way. I think he stays at Houston over going to LSU, but that Texas job, I don't care what anyone says. There's no argument to me that's the best job in the country. It'll never change. They have the most money. They have the best support. That is not as high pressure as LSU is. You play an easier schedule. Who wouldn't take that job besides Nick Saban? I mean, that's the only person who has an excuse, really. As far as defensive coordinators go, I actually prefer what Jimbo's done here in not firing Charles Kelly to what has been done at these other schools. I think that you signal that the ship is sinking when you fire a defensive coordinator. It's 5 games into the year. You played 5 games. You could have not reached your goals, but no team has completely had a loss of a season. Every team that we just talked about, if they won out, their fans would say, that was a pretty good season for us. Notre Dame and Texas included. They went out, everyone says that's a pretty good season for us. So when you fire that guy, I think what you've done is you've signaled, I think this thing is going poorly. Jimbo has staked his claim on Miami. If he loses that and he kept Charles Kelly, he really screwed himself, and he screwed the team, and he screwed a lot of people. But he has the confidence in his team and in his coaching staff and in himself to go into that game with his defensive coordinator, which I think is the right approach. And I think that's why Jimbo will have his job at the end of the year and Charlie Strong won't.
And we're going to move straight. Sorry, really quick, just to piggyback off of Doobie's comment there. I mean, yeah, if you're Notre Dame and you're looking at the rest of your schedule, if you went out, you could end up being the first 3-loss team to win a national championship. It's completely possible.
All right, we're going to move straight into the next topic. Who is the next head coach to lose their job? Head coach, Kyle.
Graham's war just climbed. He's approaching Syria. It's getting very, very close.
Well, I'll keep it quick. Doobie already said I think it's Charlie Strong. He's put himself in a position now to where if his defense continues to struggle, and nobody plays defense in the Big 12 anyway, so I have no reason to believe that they're going to do any better. If he does that, I was looking at their schedule while Doobie was talking. They play Oklahoma this weekend. They got to go to Kansas State. They play Baylor at home. They get West Virginia at home. It's funny because a month ago we were talking about how well their schedule sets up for them to do something in the Big 12. At least I was. Now, 3 weeks later, I'm talking about how their schedule can screw them with the team they're playing. So, I mean, they've already got 2 losses on there. There's still 3 losses on that schedule. They play TCU to finish. Texas Board of Regents isn't going to be happy with 7-5. I think Charlie Strong's the next guy.
Graham.
Yeah, I've got Mark Helfrich. I think that Oregon job is too nice of a job for him to go and to continue losing. I mean, that loss to Colorado was pretty bad. Loss to Washington State was pretty bad. Even giving up 28 points to UC Davis was pretty embarrassing. I think they take a look at all the coaches that are going to be looking for jobs towards the end of the year, And I think they're looking at it saying, you know what, I think we could do better. They've got the resources. They've definitely got the recruiting pipeline that they can pull from. I don't think they're going to hold on to Helfrich much longer.
Doobie.
I think Helfrich saves his job this weekend. I also think that the Texas-Oklahoma game is I think Helfrich loses his job by the end of the season, by the way, but I just think he stays there for another couple weeks this weekend. This Texas-Oklahoma game, I think, is a play-in game for which coach loses their job first. I think both Stoops and Strong lose their jobs, but I think that if Texas beats Oklahoma, Stoops loses it first or more easily. I think both guys don't lose it till the end of the season. So I guess my flashy answer would be Bob Stoops. My realistic answer is Derek Mason at Vanderbilt. I think he's gone after they lose one or two more games. So Mason at Vanderbilt, not a really position anyone cares about, so I'm sorry for bringing that up. So I'll just stick with Bob Stoops because I think he'll lose to Texas this weekend.
There's your defensive coordinator, Palmer.
Yeah, we were talking about before the podcast, before Doobie got on, when we chat a little bit before we go on, that Derek Mason, DC at FSU would not bother me one little bit.
No.
So I'm gonna go a little different than everybody, and I'm gonna talk about why in a second. But I do want to say that Doobie, I like that you brought up that game because I was listening to a podcast today called "Podcast Ain't Played Nobody." It's a SB Nation podcast on college football. They focus on the S&P. The guy that created the S&P is on there, and they have what they call the Anxiety Bowl in any week where they think there's two teams playing where the coaches are both playing for their jobs, and that was their call out this week. So that's an interesting call out. Wouldn't have thought before the season Bob Stoops would be in jeopardy, but it's looking that way. I'm going to go with Tom Helton at USC, even after their big win against Arizona State. And it's because of something I've been hearing a lot the past week that Herman.
I'm sorry to do this to you, Palmer, but Todd Helton played quarterback at Tennessee and then was a very good.
Tom.
It's Clay.
It's not Tom. It's Clay.
Whatever.
But Todd was a great baseball player. Even after backing up Peyton.
First of all, I didn't say Todd. I saw the
Todd Helton. He could really smack the balls out of the park.
Thank you for the correction. Sorry for the slip. But Clay Helton at USC. I've been hearing a lot over the past week, which I'd never heard before, that Herman's not just waiting on Texas. He's got a lot of ties in California. He's from California. And that USC job is just as tantalizing to him as Texas. And I think USC, if they have another bad loss, looks at it and says, Texas is probably going to fire Charlie Strong and go after him. Do we just do it first and see if he'll take the job? Do we hope for that? I think that's what LSU did, honestly. I think they're not going to get it. And I think USC is dumb enough the way they've handled coaching to do something like that. When I look at how they've handled coaching the past few years, that just seems like something they would do. So
I was listening to Cowherd today, and he literally said what you just said, but the exact opposite. That's
fantastic because I think Cowherd's a complete idiot. So
fair enough. But his point was, I don't disagree with you there. His point was that USC has been through this so many times in the past few years. They're not firing someone until they have an affirmation that their replacement is coming. I tend to, although I agree with you that Cowherd is an idiot sometimes, I tend to agree with him here. I actually think that the wild card there, I think Clay Helton loses his job. I think that we might see Chip Kelly leave a job willingly in the NFL to go back to college and coach at USC. I just don't see Herman taking that job. I don't understand why USC is a good job for anyone who hasn't coached on the West Coast before in a major position like Chip Kelly has. I don't consider it one of the top 5 jobs in the country, and I'm kind of baffled why everybody does. It's in the middle of the ghetto. It is a program that hasn't done anything in a long time. Historically, they had a huge gap between their prominences, and really, you can look at it as Pete Carroll being a genius, and without Pete Carroll, would they have done anything? They're not I know that they're considered a blue blood, but to me, I don't put them in those top 5 blue bloods like everyone else does.
I also don't. I don't trust Lynn Swann to hire a good coach after.
That's another great point.
Lynn Swann.
I trust him to try to hire a good coach and fail.
Jesus. I just don't understand it. Guy's got no experience. He was a wide receiver or whatever. Minimal ties.
I met him on an airplane once. He's a really nice guy, I swear. I did meet him. He was a super nice guy. So I'm cheering for him.
What a name drop.
With
when you tell
the
me
Alabama
that Cowherd said that, basically makes me like I'm so convinced I'm right now that Cowherd like completely said the opposite. Like I'm so fully convinced I'm right about that now. I think they do the bonehead thing, and then Herman goes, no, Charlie Strong's losing his job at the end of the season. I'm going to coach Texas. And they end up with somebody awful. If they end up with Chip Kelly, that would be fantastic for them. I will say the one advantage I see for USC right now over Texas, the only one, I don't think it's enough, is they do have more talent currently on roster than Texas does by a decent margin. So you look at, Texas might take a year or two to really bring the talent in. But then again, you look at what Herman's done at Houston with less talent than a lot of people, so maybe he doesn't care about that. We're going to move it along to just real quick. Ed Orgeron is the man. He went into USC as an interim head coach and dominated. He just took LSU to they had more yards against Missouri, and I know Missouri's not great, but they had more yards against Missouri this week than LSU has ever in their program's history put up against an SEC opponent.
And they've had some really good football teams.
Yeah, it's nuts to me. I want you all to just say whatever you want about this. We're going to go in normal so you can wait.
Oh, come on, man. Can we go out of order for once? Just one time.
Doobie can go first.
Doobie.
I'm excited.
One time, Doobie. What you got?
I said this last week, and it looked like I was being insane when I said it.
Yeah, I agreed with you.
That I think LSU had this as a plan all along. They targeted Ed Orgeron. They knew that this was a possibility. And now I think that LSU is in an even crazier, great position. I think that their athletic director is sitting there rubbing his hands because he's seeing the unrest going on in Tallahassee. And he's thinking, what if I could parlay this into getting Jimbo Fisher after all? And if I don't, and we don't get Herman, like I always knew we wouldn't, I still have this guy who goes out and wins. What is it? I mean, even if he loses one or two games.
42-7, I think, was this week.
But I'm saying this week, I think he goes out and blows the doors off of Florida, and then everyone's clamoring for Ed Orgeron, and then they're either getting Ed or they're getting Jimbo, and they're looking like the geniuses of college football, which I think that they are. Ed Orgeron, I think, has always been a plan here. I think they have believed in it. If I'm LSU, I don't even talk to Jimbo. If Orgeron wins this game against Florida and wins it convincingly, I'm already drawing up contracts for the end of the year.
How much money do you give him if he goes out and beats Bama? Which is a huge long shot, I know. Just curious. How much money do you throw?
$4 million a year.
That's it?
No one. I mean, I don't think Ed's going to get $5 million.
Top head coaches are making $5+ now.
No one's given Ed Orgeron $5 million other than LSU. So I think that's
beats Nick Saban.
I don't think he's going to do that, but
no.
But either way, he deserves it. I mean, I don't understand why this guy is still sitting there because he had a bad couple of years at Ole Miss. Pete Carroll couldn't cut it at a lot of places. He still won national titles.
Ed Orgeron was great in the blind side. That's all I'll say. He's going next time.
If you haven't heard a press conference with Orgeron, it's definitely worth watching. I could sit there and listen to him talk for an hour.
It's actually better than a press conference with Les Miles, which is tough to do.
My dad actually put this the best way. He said that watching Ed Orgeron talk in a press conference is like watching an episode of Duck Dynasty.
I like it.
Fitting.
All right, any more thoughts on Edo?
No, I agree with Doobie. I think he's going to make it really hard for LSU not to hire him as the next head coach. So that's really all I got there.
Graham, anything?
No, I'm good.
So yeah, Doobie, I when you said that last week, I immediately said like, damn, that sounds like it might be happening, and I think you might have hit one here. This is a definite possibility. We'll see if their boosters will be on board. If he wins games, they will be. But he's got to win games because those boosters are ruthless at LSU. They wanted so badly to get him fired last year and barely weren't able to. So
third most important game coaching wise of the year this week. You got Texas, Oklahoma, Florida State, Miami, and then Ed Orgeron playing Florida. If he wins that game, I think he's in a really good shot to get that job.
All right, we're gonna move on. We're gonna move a little quickly. We're running a bit long, so we're gonna move pretty quick through the next few topics. Next is gonna be our Heisman leaders. I usually tell them to get 3 to 5 guys ready, but really just pick a number, give me some guys, and what do you got, Kyle?
Yeah, so I still think it's Lamar Jackson's to lose. I'm not sure what he did, especially if Louisville goes 11-1. I'm not sure what he did to hurt his status. But I've also got I got Dalvin Cook in there at 4. I've got Watson at 3, and I have JT Barrett at 2. Had another good week. Like I said, I know they haven't played anybody that beat the crap out of Rutgers, but JT Barrett is a really, really good quarterback, and he's proven it week in and week out.
Graham.
Yeah, I agree with Kyle. I've still got Lamar Jackson at 1. He definitely impressed me by far over Watson. He still had 3 touchdowns that he accounted for. I still think he's leading the pack. I've got JT Barrett at number 2, and I've still got Jabril Peppers in the conversation. He didn't have an outstanding game against Wisconsin, but dude still has 22 solo tackles and 9.5 tackles for loss. Like that's insane, and I think we're only going to see more come from him. I think the one thing that they were talking about it a lot through the game on Saturday, but if you look back at Lamar Jackson, you might have a situation of Geno Smith. He might fall off quickly, but he looked really impressive against a really good Clemson defense.
Graham, and you didn't even mention that Peppers has kick return yards that are impressive, as well as offensive touches that are impressive. So he's really got a lot to go with. I'm really excited to hear Doobie's, because Doobie talked up, and everyone agreed with him that the leader for the Heisman after the Clemson-Louisville game was going to be the winning quarterback. So I am curious what you got for us, Doobie.
Well, first of all, I'm going to eat crow personally, because I didn't think that it was possible to see both of those quarterbacks play as well as they did. Even though Deshaun didn't play that great, he won the game. He won the game. I mean, he won that game. That's what happened. And if you look at the media right now, which is all that matters, like half of the sources have Deshaun Watson as the number 1 guy for the Heisman right now. If you look at him, I'm telling you, because I looked at it, I think it should be Lamar Jackson. I was so impressed by him. I'm completely eating crow and reversing field. I think that he deserves to be number 1 in that race right now. I'll continue to say I think JT Barrett wins it at the end of the year. He's my number 2 guy. Deshaun's still in there. Another guy, Greg Ward Jr., is still in there. You cannot discount his ability if he beats Louisville at the end of the year as the winning quarterback who's beaten Lamar Jackson if it comes down to those two. And then it's another one I'm reversing field on and eating crow. Last week I said there's no way we should be talking about Dalvin Cook for the Heisman. Now I think we need to be talking about Dalvin Cook for the Heisman. The guy is 3rd in all-purpose yardage without returning kicks or punts. Do you know how insane a stat that is? Like, I honestly think he's going to make this a difficult vote on voters going towards the end of this year if Jimbo doesn't lose complete control of Florida State. If they do play, some sort of formidable football and he continues at the pace he's at, his yardage from scrimmage is ridiculous. Absolutely insane. And the fact that he's taken a step forward as a receiver, we might see him unseat Leonard Fournette as the top running back in this class.
Real quick on Greg Ward. If he sits out another game because of his shoulder against a lowly team and only plays 10 games, does that take him out even if he beats Louisville at the end?
I don't think he can beat Deshaun Watson or JT Barrett in that case if he sits out.
But you think he's invited?
Oh, yeah, I think he's considered. I think he's got to be a guy that's considered because he truly was, when they moved him from wide receiver to quarterback, that's what really seemed to turn this program around. And if they're going into the playoff, I think that you see a lot of people clamoring for him to get that vote even without the stats. But I think it's going to be an interesting year. I think you're going to have stats versus wins once again like we do every year. And I think that Dalvin Cook makes that even more interesting.
Interesting thing for Cook for you, Doobie. He's our number 2. He's Florida State's number 2 receiver for receptions and yards so far this year.
And he's just behind Bobo. Just behind him.
3 less receptions and 54 less yards.
That's nuts.
I agree with you on the Cook stuff because I see McCaffrey still in a lot of these lists, and that to me is nuts because he has like 600 return yards so far. And he's got less than 1,000 all-purpose yards. Like, all of his yards are return yards right now. Mm-hmm. So I'm getting a little annoyed by that. Like, he's a great player, but he's not in the Heisman conversation at all to me. Lamar's still my number 1. He was the best player in that game to me. I'm jumping on the Doobie train. I think Barrett's going to end up being the guy. I think he has a great game every single game the rest of the season. His stats speak for themselves, and they're undefeated. So I'm jumping on that hype train with you, Doobie. And then I'm with Graham on Peppers at 3. If he continues to get enough offensive touches, we'll see what Harbaugh does with that. But Harbaugh seems to me like the kind of guy that will do it to get him the Heisman because that's the kind of stuff Harbaugh freaking loves. And I think after they lose to OSU, when is that in the season? Does anyone know that off the top of their heads?
I don't know.
Well, if it's soon, I think after they lose that game and they know they're probably not going to the
Michigan,
playoffs.
Ohio State?
Yeah.
It's the last game of the season. Every year.
Okay. So that won't affect it. But I think he gives him the touches because Harbaugh loves that kind of stuff. Moving on again.
Just really quick, I would say that, and I'm sorry to keep talking about Florida State, but if they lose, I mean, even if they win these games, they've lost all shots at the playoffs. I think you see Jimbo as a guy, you might not think that, but he knows what recruiting-wise that would mean for him. Gives Cook a lot of targets, a lot of touches, so I think that could play into it as well.
I think you're right on that. I think that you could see some 100-yard receiving and 100-yard running games a lot this year if that's the case. Next topic, it's going to be most disappointing team. I'm going to go and give mine now because it's simple. It's Florida State. We've talked enough about it. If anyone has a different team, we'll let you talk about it. Does anyone have a different team?
I do not. So if anybody else does.
Graham?
The only one that I'd throw out there is Stanford. For them to be ranked that high and to lose by 38 points is pretty absurd.
Doobie?
San Diego State.
Yeah, that's pretty bad too.
Yeah, that was rough. I was talking Pumphrey for the Heisman well, not for the Heisman, but at least in the top 5 conversation not long ago, and them looking like another Houston-esque Group of 5 team, but that was an embarrassing
Well,
loss.
here's another thing for San Diego State. Why would you schedule a game at South Alabama? I know they're not a Power 5 team, but they have had a good history. Marshall Faulk went there. They've always been a team that has kind of been on the fringe of being a Group of 5 contender or a non-BCS contender. Why would you schedule a game at that school? Even if you think you're going to blow them out, there's no point to doing that.
I'm going to say this. I've absolutely loved Doobie's call-outs of bad scheduling decisions this year. We might make that a segment. We might get the weekly bad scheduling decision that Doobie will present by himself because these have been some great call-outs with the North Dakota State call-out before and this one. So, Doobie, start doing your research on these because I think I'm going to want one every week from you.
Fair enough. Maybe I'll predict another one ahead of time instead of proclaiming San Diego State as my most impressive team and then following it up with as my least impressive team, like a wavering politician.
Yeah, we don't have enough of those around. All right, we're going to move on to most impressive team. It can be week or season, so what do you have, Kyle?
I've got for the week, and I've got Washington. I think Jake Browning has looked really, really good. The team looked amazing at home, as we talked about earlier. Still to be determined how they can finish on the road. Struggle with Arizona, but did get the W. I really like that team. They're going in the right direction. Schedule's right in front of them for them to, do what people are expecting of them. People have them as sleepers, dark horses to win the Pac-12. Well, here's their chance right now. They beat up on Stanford. They were really impressive last week.
Graham?
I think the most impressive for me was Tennessee. Kyle mentioned it earlier. They're the Auburn of 2013 this year. They just find a way to win. It's luck, and I don't want to say it's impressive from a talent standpoint, but man, if they can continue to do that against Texas A&M and Alabama these next 2 weeks, there's nothing you can say against them. A win's a win's a win, and they find a way to win.
Doobie?
All right. I hate doing this, but I'm going to go with a couple teams here. For the week, I'm going to go with South Alabama. I'm going to leverage my bets and say, since I didn't pick San Diego State. No, but South Alabama beat Mississippi State and then beat San Diego State. I know they have 2 other losses, but for a team in Alabama trying to make a rise, team that just got into the FBS, that's pretty impressive things to do. You can hinge a program on those types of wins. Louisville, to me, season long, has got to be my most impressive team. They really played with so much heart and so impressively to come back and almost win that game. And if it isn't for a false object on the field that, thank God, won me $200, they might have won that game. It's like, by the way, what I'm speaking of is, if no one saw it, there was an orange marker on the sideline just before the first down marker out of bounds, which is why everyone was so curious why that receiver was saying he had a first down when he was a yard short. There was an orange marker sitting about a yard back of that was just sitting there that receiver very easily could have seen and thought it was the first down marker. Jackson could have seen it. So the fact that it even came down to that close to me is incredible. Petrino is an evil genius. He is Urban Meyer, not quite as evil, but he's getting there. Very impressed by both of those teams. Also, Colorado. Still shouting out to Colorado. I chose them a few weeks ago.
Damn it, Doobie. I thought I had a fresh one.
They're looking pretty awesome in the top 25 now, I believe. And I've transitioned to red wine.
I'm so upset because I thought I had an impressive team that no one was going to talk about, and then you Colorado.
I chose them a few weeks ago.
Oh well. Also, what's weird about the South Alabama thing is they're 0-2 in their conference.
Yeah,
their only 2 conference games they've lost, but then they've beaten an SEC team, and then they beat an undefeated, good-looking San Diego State team. So that just doesn't make any sense at all. On that marker thing with Louisville, did y'all hear? I don't know how false or correct the report was today, but there was a report that there was a fight in the locker room, Louisville locker room after the game, where Louisville went to that receiver and said, there are soldiers standing up and fighting for our country, and you can't fight for that first down.
Damn, bro, they're trying him. Wow.
That has been reported as a thing that happened in the Louisville locker room after the game.
Don't put any of those players on the San Francisco 49ers. Oh, my God.
I just thought that was that's a nuts comment from a quarterback to his wide receiver. That's the highest takes in the media level. The Lamar Jackson said this to the receiver.
Oh, wow.
That's the report. I don't know if it's true or it's false, but SB Nation had some tweets about it. I hope it's true because that's one of the craziest things I've ever heard.
I kind of like that. You know what? Genghis Khan fought to take over that many countries, and you can't fight for 1 yard?
All right, we're going to move along. We're going to have to kind of go quickly through my favorite topic because we're running long, but it's a reverse Heisman. Really, the point of this, if you haven't watched before, is an important player on a team that's supposed to be good or is a big-name program at least that's just bad and is killing their team and is just awful. And it doesn't have to be that awful, but it's poor play generally. So, Kyle, who do you have for us this week?
So I've got a little bit of a difference here. I've gone with Texas's special teams, specifically their extra point kicking unit, and Trent Domingue, their kicker. Texas lost 49-31, so I'm not sure these 3 extra points would have mattered all that much. But they had 3 extra points blocked in the first half. Now, we did see a couple extra points blocked this past weekend, which was interesting enough to me. But 3 in the first half, it's unacceptable. At a college program like that, the big hosses you have on the line, kick the ball up. You can blame it on either side, either the line, the kicker, whatever. That's just absolutely awful.
Graham, who's your reverse?
My reverse Heisman's Christian McCaffrey. I've been dogging a lot on Stanford today. I picked him to be in the playoffs, and with him to only have 79 total yards on the game, with 30 of that coming from 2 separate plays, for him to be kind of the heart and soul of that team and be the whole reason that they're ranked that high and that they're winning games, and for him to go out and put a performance like that together is not what you want to see from a hopeful Heisman and the one guy that you need to win your game.
Doobie got back just in time. Reverse Heisman, Doobie.
Hopefully Graham didn't say this. Christian McCaffrey.
He just went over this.
Yeah, man. Well, really got to come off one. I'll go. Oh man, this is tough. Who am I going to go for my?
You got 5 seconds.
Who's the kid who just left Alabama? Who's the kid who just left Alabama?
Blake Barnett.
I'll go with Blake Barnett because he does not like the spirit of competition, and he is no Sean McGuire in my book.
I like it.
Graham, I'm going to push back on you very slightly and say that Stanford's OL has been just shit. They have been awful, and he got hit in the backfield every single play, and that's not his style. He's not a guy that can break a bunch of tackles in the backfield and go off. He needs a little running room, and he's a dangerous open field guy. But their OL has been beyond disappointing, so that's a tough one. I got some pushback. Doobie, you weren't here for it. Graham, Kyle, and I were talking about it. I don't think he's been awful, but I'm going Francois at Florida State. And I blame this on the coaches for hyping him up more than they have, but the guy's got a lot of stuff he's got to fix, and I've seen zero improvement. I've seen a little digression from day one from the Ole Miss game. He misses. He doesn't see open receivers. He doesn't read defense as well. He holds onto the ball on first down way too often, takes bad sacks, which just kills drives. The one thing I'll say is he had the play of his life at the end of that game that should have won Florida State the game. That was fantastic. That was amazing. But as a quarterback, to me, he looks like a little more athletic E.J. Manuel to me, and that's not a quarterback I really want to lead my team for the next few years. I know you're shaking your head, but I just haven't seen enough from him that shows me he's got it. Most of his big completions are thrown behind receivers, and they make great adjustments and catches on it.
At any other,
I don't blame him. I blame the hype behind him from the coaches, honestly.
No, the hype is not from the coaches. At any other university that didn't have a redshirt freshman, Jameis Winston, come in and win the Heisman, we're not talking about this kid in any other way, but he looks very promising and is going to be a great quarterback one day. It's because of Jameis Winston that we're all judging this. Jimbo could have come out and said, this kid is not going to be very good. And we all still would have said, he's a black redshirt freshman quarterback. He's going to win the Heisman. He has looked he's looked a lot better than I expected him to, but through 6 games. He has looked, decision-making wise, he doesn't turn the ball over. He doesn't turn the ball over. This kid is going to be a very good quarterback. I've been very impressed by him, and I am completely disagreeing with everything you just said, and that's not even as a homer. If I was watching this neutrally, this kid has played very well with the amount of time he's had in the backfield and what he's had to work with. Receivers are still dropping balls. He's making the plays. He's not perfect, but he's a redshirt freshman.
I'm going to need to see his accuracy improve drastically, and I'm going to need to see his decision-making improve, because you cannot sit there for 15 seconds in the pocket on first down without throwing the ball out of bounds and get sacked for 8 yards, which he did twice in really bad situations.
He is a redshirt freshman. Shane Buechele did the same shit against Oklahoma State, and no one's saying that kid is lost.
I didn't watch that game. I will say I didn't watch that game, and I will also say that it was between Francois and Buechele from our verses. Mostly, and like I said, I'm not putting it on them as young guys. I'm putting it on their hype that got hyped up as these, great young guys that were going to lead their teams this year and are just not doing it. And admittedly, I had a tough time with this week. There's no top players that are really just completely, in my opinion, shitting the bed for themselves.
Yeah, you really lost the Josh Dobbs crutch.
Yeah, man, damn it. I'm so mad I cannot yell about how bad Josh Dobbs is because he's awful, but he's still somehow winning games. It just pisses me off. Anyway, moving on to the little bit of a preview for next week. We got 4 ranked matchups. So any talk about those or any other games y'all excited for? The 4 ranked matchups are Tennessee at Texas A&M, which is the biggest of the week. Virginia Tech, yes, they are ranked. They're number 25. Justin Fuente doing some things. They are at UNC, who is ranked after that freaking Florida State game. We got Bama at Arkansas, who I know Doobie's going to have a lot of fun with in this topic right now. At least I'm hoping he does. And then finally we have FSU at Miami. So thoughts on these games or any others? Kyle, go ahead.
I'm excited about Tennessee and Texas A&M. Yet another week for Tennessee to prove that they belong. They were my SEC East pick, so they're making me look really, really good right now. But Texas A&M is a good football team. I think a lot better than people thought they were going to be this year. Their defensive line, Myles Garrett, has absolutely dominated people, so that's going to be fun. Don't really have.
Is he healthy? He didn't play this week. Is he going to be back?
I'm sure he plays against Tennessee. I'm sure, but I don't know the answer for sure. And then, I'm not exactly excited about Virginia Tech UNC. I'm still bitter about having to watch anything in powder blue at this point. And then Florida State Miami. Obviously, all our eyes will be on that at 8:00. We've talked plenty about that game. I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun. And like I said, I think this is kind of for me like. If Miami doesn't win this year, and that makes 7 years in a row, they're not going to win for a while, in my opinion, because this is, for me, the least confident I've been about beating Miami since 2009. And we've had a really, really good run with Jimbo, but just the way we're kind of limping into this game scares me a little bit. So hopefully Jimbo can turn these boys around and can motivate them. But, like I said, it has a Tennessee-Florida feel to me, in that right now we've got their number, and if they can't figure out a way to win in the year where we're struggling like we are at this point, I'm not sure it's going to happen for a long time.
Graham.
Yeah, looking at the Tennessee-Texas A&M game, it's really hard to pick a winner in this, with Tennessee being so lucky the past couple of weeks, but they find a way to win. I think I'm going to have to go with Texas A&M in that game. I think UNC beats Virginia Tech. I think Bama beats Arkansas. I don't think it's really going to be that close of a game. And I think if it were any other head coach coaching for Miami, I would pick Miami to beat Florida State this weekend. But Mark Richt is known to absolutely shit the bed against any team that's ranked in the top 25, regardless if they're number 25 or number 1. He can't get his players to get up and play a big game. So, honestly, this game could end up in a tie 0-0. Who knows? But I have a hard time picking Mark Richt to win a ranked game, a game against a ranked opponent.
Dewey.
I guess I'll start off with what everyone's been waiting for. Arkansas, Alabama. Brett Bielema used to be the coach of the Badgers. Now he is facing a Badger. I like to compare Brett Bielema not to a bear, but more to a cow. So you've got a Badger against a cow. And this is so extreme in this situation because this cow used to be a Badger. So he still has the fight within him that the little guy does. And they're going up against each other. And one has these big claws, and the other has nothing within him. But somehow, this cow finds a way to use his size and his might to defeat the Badger. No one knows how, no one knows why, and in the end, no one's saying that the cows can defeat the Badgers ever again. But this one time, it happens. Arkansas defeats Alabama. It's Alabama's only loss. No one ever remembers it, and Brett Bielema is still a fat asshole. Going to UNC Virginia Tech. I think this is an awesome game. I'm very excited for this. I predicted Virginia Tech to win that Coastal before the year. I don't know that happens anymore. UNC, I did not expect Trubisky to be as good as he is, and I think that they win this game. And I think that UNC might throw another scenario at us again where they're going into the ACC championship with the possibility of getting in the playoff. That's a homer reaction 100% because they just beat us. As far as Tennessee, Texas A&M, I like Tennessee. I also, for all of you people out there who like doing illegal activities, really like Tennessee's money line. Plus 225 is what I believe I just got it at. Didn't actually get it at. In my head, I thought about doing it. So Tennessee at plus 225 is a great bet. I also recommend to all you people out there, Oregon plus 280 or maybe 260, whatever you can get it at. If it's plus 250, you should take it because I think they're pulling that upset in Autzen Stadium off the mat there. FSU Miami, I would be betting, if I was not a fan and a homer, I would be betting all of my money on Florida State in this game. I refuse to bet on Florida State because I'm too biased. I think that Jimbo Fisher is a better coach than anyone is giving him credit for this week. I think that Charles Kelly is not as bad as everyone assumes that he is, and I think that Jimbo knows how much this means to his career. I think that Florida State goes out and pounds Miami into the pavement. I think the defense looks better, and I think that everyone is kind of reversing field on everything we said about Jimbo. And we're going into that Clemson game saying that maybe we could upset them, even though we all know that's not a great possibility.
Dude, are you talking about Florida State spread or straight up?
Straight up.
If you weren't a homer, like betting, because Miami is favorite. Miami is the favorite.
I would take the money line with everything. The spread is right now at 3, I believe, what I saw it at. I would take the money line.
It started at 2 and already moved 2-3 for Miami.
So. Oh, and I think the public money is going to keep moving that on Miami. I think that might get as high as 4 or 5. So
I agree.
I love Florida State in that game from a non-homer perspective, but because I am a homer, I refuse to bet on that.
All right, I'm gonna give a few here. The only undefeated matchup of the weekend, the FBS, is the Tennessee Texas A&M game. That I got A&M easily in that game. I agree. I think it was Kyle earlier that talked about Tennessee being this year's Auburn from 2013, where they just found ways to win. I just don't see it happening. I think A&M is a lot better than we expected preseason, at least myself. I know they were ranked highly, but they always are because they're SEC. I think they take that one easily. FSU Miami terrifies the hell out of me. If our defense plays with the effort they've been playing with, we're not going to win that game. That's all there is to it. If they can't man up and put the effort in, and if we're in a late fourth quarter situation and guys are jogging to make a tackle and give up an easy touchdown, like happened against UNC, I mean, I can't see us winning if that kind of effort's going on. Another game I'm interested in, where is it? Is Western Michigan versus Northern Illinois, and it's only because PJ Fleck has become like a phenomenon. Their head coach is hilarious. If you watch the videos of his locker room speeches, they're fantastic. This team is 5-0 and fun to watch. His motto is "row the boat," and he'll talk about it extensively on many videos if you watch his interviews. It's a football story to watch just for pure amusement purposes. They are heavily favored and probably going to blow Northern Illinois out, who's awful this year. But I'm keeping an eye on that team for the pure entertainment of PJ Fleck. So.
I do want to comment on that. PJ Fleck is 35 years old, and if by chance Jimbo Fisher is not the head coach of Florida State next year, I think that PJ Fleck is. Credit to Blake Johnston.
I've seen that.
Credit to Blake Johnston for being the first one to bring that idea to my head.
You've been hanging out with Blake Johnston's Twitter too much.
Well, when he said it, I looked into it, and you look at Florida State, the way we hire coaches is not based on big names. We hire coaches based on potential. There's no one with more potential than that guy. He has roots in Florida as well. He was the receivers coach for the Bucks.
All right. That is what it looked. So we didn't talk about. I want to talk about this real quick before we log off. People are probably going to stop listening at this point, but whatever. I want to talk about it. How mad do y'all think the Big 12 is that they're having to hitch their wagon to Baylor right now?
Oh my God.
Yeah, that sucks.
How mad are all of us? Are you mad? We were all. Who wasn't cheering for Iowa State? You want a team. I mean, I really actually love Grobe. I love Grobe, and for his sake alone, I hope that Baylor can actually do something. But that'd be like if Penn State the year after. First of all, why are there not sanctions on Baylor already? Why is this even a conversation? And if Penn State, if they had gone to the title with a Sandusky player-ritted team, it doesn't like why are there not sanctions? Who's cheering for Baylor outside of Baylor's fan base? I don't know.
By the way, go ahead.
Go ahead. That's it. I hope that doesn't happen.
So this is how much this apparently is going to happen this year. There were after this weekend as well. Other than the Baylor game, there were 130 teams so far that have been down by 14 points in the fourth quarter. Not a single one of them has won the game. Baylor won the game after being down 14 points in the fourth quarter. Teams with that situation, their record is 1-130, and Baylor won that game.
Unreal.
They were playing Iowa State. Let's not build them up to be some fantastic giant.
No. Oh, I'm not. I'm just saying, like, that's how ridiculous it is that they're somehow still undefeated.
Yeah,
top team.
I agree.
Like, it's and the Big 12's got to hitch their wagon. They got nobody. That's the only playoff possible team in the Big 12.
Do you think the Big 12 lobbies for them at the end of the year? I think that's going to be very interesting because then it's going to go back to, like, that will be – if they do any marketing, anything along the lines of other than saying Jim Grobe is a great man and he's very old, let's all, for his sake, put this team into the playoff. He's never going to get there again because he's not going to be the coach next year. They can't do this and not look like a bunch of scumbags.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a weird situation to where, like, the conference they have so much trouble because they don't have that conference championship. Every year it's going to be them talking about how they still need a playoff team. And this is it. This is their playoff team. This is it. They're done without Baylor. Any thoughts, Kyle and Graham?
Gross.
I got nothing on this one. It's embarrassing for the Big 12, but Big 12 has been embarrassing for the last 3 years in this playoff situation, so it's just a different animal.
Graham, anything?
Not on that game, but I think dark horse Heisman to take a look for is Joey Julius, the kicker for Penn State. If he keeps making hits like this, he might be a Heisman dark horse.
So screw it. We're gonna keep going because I actually meant to bring this up earlier and forgot. Y'all, did y'all hear about this? So after this is the Penn State kicker for those who don't know, that runs down the field and tackles punt returners and kick returners, and he's a huge fat guy that tackles the hell out of people. So he got targeted this week. Not the meaning of the definition of the penalty, but like somebody went after him. It was after the whistle, and they just decked him.
And he got him.
And the guy got ejected from the game immediately, even though there was actually no rule to eject him. The refs just decided to, which was odd because there was no targeting. It was just a late hit. And the refs ejected him without any authority to, I don't think. So that was interesting. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Nope, I'm good.
I love it.
All right. You love the ejection or love the hit in the punch?
I just love that guy. Give him he can come over to my house anytime.
All right. Any closing thoughts, boys?
Nah, I got nothing, man. Go Noles. Let's see if we can right the ship. Absolutely not.
Talk to you. Graham?
If the NFL season was only 8 games instead of 16 games, the Falcons would probably have won 5 Super Bowls by now.
And Doobie.
Huge week for Florida State, the biggest game we've had in a long time. Here's to hoping and praying that Jimbo Fisher is who we thought he was.
My only last thought is whoever this one viewer is that's been our last live viewer for the past 20 minutes while we've rambled at the end, text me because I got to know. I got to know who's watching us through this awful last 20 minutes of just rambling.
Respect to the one live viewer. Respect.
It used to be Graham, but Graham's now on the podcast, so I know it's not Graham, so I don't know who this is.
No, I've got it pulled up on my phone next to the computer just so we get an extra viewer.
There we go. All right. All right, there it is. All right. Good night, everybody. Hope you all have a good week.
Guys.
Hopefully we'll be back next week.
All right.
Love
Peace.
you.